I'm Emily Taylor. I'm the lead author for the IDN World Report, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about the linkages between IDNs and multilingualism. When we're thinking about linkages between IDNs and multilingualism, we look at three different aspects. We look at the hosting of IDNs and what that tells us. We look at the language of web content and the script of IDNs and what that tells us. And then we also compare the language of web content associated with IDNs to that associated with domain names in general. And the overall message is that IDNs are more associated with linguistic diversity than their counterpart domain names. The first aspect is that IDN scripts reflect the languages spoken in countries. If you're looking at where IDNs are hosted, you will see that the pattern is not random at all. So in countries where Russian is spoken, you will see Cyrillic script IDNs hosted in those countries. Where Chinese is spoken, you see Han script, Arabic script in North Africa and the Middle East, and so on. So if you look at a map of the script of IDNs compared to where they're hosted, you'll really see how it reflects the languages spoken in those countries. Overall, web content is not as linguistically diverse as the languages spoken offline. We see that overall in the world, English is overrepresented as the language of about 50 to 55% of web content. Thinking about how IDNs might support multilingualism, we looked at the language of the web content associated with internationalized domain names and then checked what script of IDN was pointing to that web content. And there's nearly a perfect correlation. So where you would have, for example, a German language site, it's almost always going to be a Latin script IDN with accents that will be pointing to that content, and so on with Chinese, Korean, and Russian. You will have the scripts that signal those languages of content. So from that, we suggest that IDNs are really being used by people as a signal. You're going to find multilingual content. You're going to find this language if you click on this domain. Web content is more linguistically diverse with IDNs than it is with general domain names. So we know that only 5% of people in the world speak English as their native language, and yet over half of web content is in English language. So do IDNs in some way redress that balance? The answer is yes. So only about 10% of web content associated with IDNs is in English language. And you see that it's much more in proportion, say, with the number of Chinese speakers in the world, round about 20%. You've got about the same proportion of web content associated with Chinese language. So in some ways, albeit at a very small level, because only 2% of the world's domains are actually IDNs at present, but even so, we see a significantly different pattern in the language of web content associated with these multilingual domain names.